we'll get started and hopefully a few more people will be joining as I'm talking. But hi everyone, so good to have you all here as part of our co-production webinar series. And in this session today, we'll be focusing on evaluating co-production. So we'll be offering some insights that can hopefully help you to measure impact and improve outcomes within your work. Thank you so much for joining. These sessions are really open to anyone, so whether you know a lot about co-production already or you just want to learn more, it's really great to have you here on this Monday afternoon. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start. So we are using Zoom webinar today, which basically means you're in a bit of a different room to us as the viewers, but you should hopefully be able to see and hear the panelists on screen. We do have a British Sign Language interpreter with us today. You have the option of clicking, there's a button on the bottom that says interpreter. So you have the option of clicking that, which means you can move or resize the video as you need to. And we also have closed captions enabled, so you can click on the CC button below to enable them. So just to introduce myself briefly and why we're doing this webinar series before we get going. I'm Liddy and I'm co-production lead at Disability Rights UK. And if you don't know who we are, we're a disabled people's organisation, which means we're led by disabled people. And we work across the UK to influence better rights for disabled people. And why are we doing this webinar series? You might have heard of it already, but last summer we launched a resource called the Co-Production Narrative. And this is a really practical guide. It's aimed at the sports sector, but I know that there's loads of other people from other sectors who have found it really useful for their work. And the response to this resource has been really good. But as I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, once you launch a resource like this, sometimes it can be forgotten about. So really this webinar series is about keeping momentum going, keeping that conversation going and really bringing that narrative to life as well. So if you've not seen it before, I'll pop it into the chat so you can have a little look at this resource in your own time. And these webinar topics, we're keeping them really short and focused, so no longer than about half an hour, and hopefully they've been really easy for you to fit into your busy schedules. We do hope to do a bit of a Q&A in today's session as well. So if you have any questions as Mike is talking, then we have the Q&A box that you can put questions into, and we have the chat box open as well. We do also have a very short poll at the end to collect feedback. So if you've got a minute or two just to fill this in, this means we can keep creating resources and webinars like the one today. So today we're really excited to be joined by Mike from the Co-Production Network for Wales. And the network works across sectors with public services that really support people's lives. So from government to local authorities, the public sector, voluntary sector, helping teams to apply co-production values to their work. So enough of me talking now. I'll pass over to Mike. And thank you very much everyone for joining us today. So over to you, Mike.
Wonderful. Thank you, Liddy. And hi, everyone. It's really good to be with you this afternoon. As Liddy said, I'm keen to chat to you all for maybe 20 minutes or so, and then to leave any time we have remaining to answer and explore your questions. So I'm going to keep an eye on the Q&A throughout and do share and fire any of those questions at me as you have them, and I'll ensure we have some time at the end to talk about them. But as Lily mentioned, I work with the Co-Production Network for Wales, and I have a really keen interest in evaluation and in co-evaluation. So when it comes to the question of how we should evaluate co-production, the 5-second answer for me would be, well, we should evaluate it co-productively. So where I'd like to start today is really sharing some ideas of what good co-evaluation looks like, and how we can apply those principles across every aspect of our work, as well as in the evaluation of our own co-production practice. And then I'll make sure we finish as well by sharing some links to some practical resources that can help us find the perfect evaluation methodologies for our needs and to help guide us through the application of those methodologies. You may have seen in the chat as well, Lydia has linked to an article that I wrote for CoPro Collective a few years ago now, sharing some of my thoughts on good co-evaluation. And I'm going to draw upon some of the key themes from that article as I talk to you all this afternoon. So that will be there as a reference and an aid memoir you can go back to rather than feeling the need to be scribbling notes down as I'm talking today. But to start there, then, in terms of what good co-evaluation looks like, what it means for me, and how we can apply it to our own work. For me, there are 10 things we should always remember. And I'm going to go through each of the 10 in turn. And they're in no particular order. However, if there is one most important, I think it's the first one. And point one for me is that people are not data points. So, what do I mean by this? I mean, as evaluators, we may work with data, but we are not fundamentally interested in data. We are fundamentally interested in people. And behind every data point lies a person with a story, with a family, with challenges, with passions, with opportunities. And we forget that at our peril. So what does good co-evaluation look like? Well, good co-evaluation entails making sure that we don't lose sight of the people behind the data. We don't quantify everything without capturing the stories. We don't turn everything into a number because sometimes the experience of the individual is atomistic. It can't be broken down any further. Methodologies which allow people to express themselves, to share their stories, to talk about the totality of their experience. They are truer to the values of co-production than those that boil people down to data, treat everybody as the same, forget stories that lie behind the numbers. People are not data points, and as co-evaluators, we are passionate about people. And in evaluating our own co-production practice, we should start by giving people creative ways to share their experience, to tell us what's important to them, to tell us how things felt, to tell us what could be better, really empowering them to work with us in an interesting, open, and relational way. So that's our first point. People are not data points, and our evaluation should reflect that. Secondly, it's about the fact that as co-evaluators, we can, and I would argue we should, disrupt our results. So sometimes there can be a sense that an evaluator is like a scientist in the lab. We're trying to observe the effects of our work and our behavior, but not disrupt that work and that behavior. We don't want to interfere with the results because somehow we'll invalidate them or mess them up. But I'm not convinced that that's the case when it comes to co-evaluation and working in the co-production space. Let me put it this way. Um, every time we ask someone for feedback, we have an impact on them. If we ask them in a way that empowers them, that makes them feel valued and listened to, that will have an impact on our results. If we shove a survey under their nose and say, fill this in, and I'm going to lose my funding, that may make them feel tokenized or disempowered or manipulated, and that will have an impact upon them. And if we don't ask them anything, that might mean that they carry thoughts with them that they never have the opportunity to share, and that will have an impact on them. So when we work with people, when we're engaged in complexity, when we are speaking to people or not speaking to people, as the case may be, all day, every day, we can't help but disrupt our results. So the question becomes, how do we want to disrupt our results? How can we ensure our evaluation has a net positive, not a net negative impact? So good co-evaluation for me is an experience which actually empowers people. It gives them more opportunities to build relationships, more opportunities to share power, more opportunities to share responsibility, enhances their sense of agency. So when we're evaluating our own co-production practice, part of the evaluation decision should be, will this process empower people, bring them closer to each other, bring them closer to us, enhance people's sense of agency, give us more ability to do more things together in the future? Our co-evaluations are a great opportunity. In my experience, they're often the starting point for the evaluation, for the co-production. Evaluation is a great opportunity to say, how was this for you? Tell me your story. What could make things better next time? What could we do together, which would be better than what we could do in isolation? Would you like to work with us on that? So co-evaluation can be the starting point. And we shouldn't be afraid of disrupting our results. We should embrace it and we should disrupt them for the better of everyone. Thirdly, and in a closely connected way, good co-evaluation should be inseparable from the service. It shouldn't be a tick box that we bolt on to the end of a project. I know I've been guilty of this. I'm certain many of you will have experience where we almost forget about evaluation till the very end. And then we say, oh, by the way, how was that for you? Give us some feedback. Whereas really good co-evaluation should be about developing a learning culture. We design things together, we take actions together, we reflect together, we learn together, we move on together. And so it should feel more like a two-way continuous conversation than a periodic consultation. If the evaluation is truly co-productive, that learning will be so organic and so embedded, it will then become pretty blurred where the evaluation ends and the service starts. It should just feel part of the value-added experience. People should be accustomed to always learning, always sharing, always growing together. So a good test of whether our evaluation is truly co-productive is how easy it would be to untangle it all from everything else that you do. If it would be difficult, that's a good indicator that you're moving in the right direction. Fourthly, it's really about the necessity to evaluate in this way. And this is particularly true of evaluating your own co-production practice. Sometimes we say the time for co-production is when we operate in complexity. So there are different kinds of challenge out there in the world. There are simple challenges. That might be a challenge like baking a cake. If we've got the recipe book and if we've got the ingredients, we don't have to be an expert. We just follow the instructions carefully and we will get the desired result. Then there are complicated challenges. They might be things like building a rocket. It's much harder than baking a cake. We might need some professional support. We might need some technical training, but there's still a list of ingredients or components. There's still an instruction manual, albeit a much thicker, more complex one. But if we follow those instructions and do things in the right order, in the right way, we will get a knowable, desirable, repeatable result. Complexity is different. Complexity, the analogy might be like raising a child. If a toddler has a meltdown in a supermarket, you can have read all of the books on parenting. You can have spoken to all of the other parents. You can draw on all of your past experience. But ultimately, that will only take you so far. You need to innovate. You need to respond to what's actually happening. You need to trial new solutions. You need to work together. How can we negotiate to come up with a solution in this moment? And a week later, when that same toddler has a different meltdown in a different supermarket, you'll need a brand new solution again. So complexity describes those situations where everything is contingent upon everything else, where methodologies which are well established can be helpful, training and expertise can be helpful, but they can't tell you everything you need to know to create a solution. In co-production, we are all working in those complex, messy environments where everything is contingent upon everything else, where everything is connected, where we always need to innovate and create new solutions. In that space, linear evaluations, asking predetermined questions in a fixed way, are never going to cut it. We need to ask open-ended questions in a qualitative, story-based, creative way that allow us to capture those unknown unknowns, those things we didn't even know we should be asking about, and allow us to generate brand new solutions together. So it goes beyond testing established theory and into the realm of developing brand new, innovative practice. If your work feels more like raising a child and less like baking a cake or building a rocket, co-evaluation is essential. The sixth point, making sure I don't lose count, is that we should co-evaluate and bring these methodologies to bear whenever it will make people feel good. That alone should be reason enough. So the opportunity to be asked how you feel, the opportunity to share your story, the opportunity to engage with your creativity, to write something, to draw something, to perform something, the opportunity to connect with your friends, with your peers, to make new connections and new friends, and to do something in a way which is personalized and meaningful and relevant to you. If that's going to make you feel good, then that should be an incentive for us to evaluate in that co-productive way, rather than in a staid, fixed way, which at the very least may have a neutral response, but at worst, as we said earlier, could have a negative response, perhaps leaving someone feeling frustrated or tokenized or not listened to. So there is always an opportunity for us to think, what will really put a smile on someone's face? And is there an opportunity here for us to share together, to learn together, to grow together? Like we said, not only will that make people feel good in the moment, but as we said earlier, it can actually enhance the impact of the service itself. So if your evaluation will make people feel good, that's a big tick, and it's an indicator you're evaluating in the right way. The seventh point for me is that we should make these ways of evaluating our rule, not our exception. And again, for me, this comes back to one of the central points about co-production more broadly. Sometimes when I talk to people about co-production, I say it's that shift from doing things to people to doing things with people. And something I often find is that we may have a default of doing things to or doing things for people. And we ask ourselves, is there any opportunity for us to do things with people in particular places? I'd argue a better approach is to ask, is there any good reason not to do things with people everywhere, all of the time? That way, it means we will never miss an opportunity to co-produce where we should. There may be some very sensible and valid reasons not to co-evaluate, including the evaluation of our own co-production practice at certain times with certain audiences for certain reasons. There may be times where something more statistical, more quantitative, more observational, more data-led is completely appropriate. But rather than making those approaches our default, we should say our default is to do everything in this creative, qualitative, co-produced, messy way. And only when there is good reason not to will we take a different tack. That way, we will never miss an opportunity to co-evaluate. The next thing for me is something I've encountered when talking to lots of funders about these approaches. It's the difference between a lack of certainty and the lack of a plan. So when it comes to how we evaluate, like all good co-production, the co-evaluation should to some extent be open-ended. We should have a slightly open mind as to exactly how we will learn, how we will assess, how we will measure. We should even have an open mind as to what success even looks like, because all of these things should be co-produced. A co-evaluation should define success together, define the milestones towards that success together, acknowledge that different groups or different individuals or different communities may have different milestones at a different pace. The different methodologies, ways of measuring and assessing progress may be different for different people and different communities. And as we learn, these approaches may evolve and change over time. Some things will work, some things won't. Some things will go faster than expected and some slower. That can be challenging for funders and other benefactors who like us to be able to spell out really clearly what will happen from day one, from the point we write the application. But what we have to be confident in is that just because we don't know exactly what's going to happen doesn't mean we don't have a plan. On the contrary, our plan is to be flexible. Our plan is to listen to and respond to the needs of our community. Our plan is to learn and evolve together. Our plan is for our evaluation to constantly regrow and evolve and be reshaped by the emerging and evolving needs of our community. And we can give our funders and benefactors certainty that we will always be evolving, we always be evaluating in the right way, at the right time, for the right people by committing to these principles. So we might not be able to commit to the exact outputs at day one, but we can lock in those principles at day one, and that will ensure whatever we're doing is right for the right people at the right moment. In a connected way, my ninth point is that a high quality of evidence doesn't have to mean a low quality of experience. So again, the exaggerated example here might be to say the only way to have truly great quality evaluation is for me to be austere, serious, lab coat, clipboard, measuring things in a way which is completely neutral and impartial and impassive. But again, that has an impact, as we discussed earlier. That can tokenize people. It can make them feel disempowered. It can make them feel like they're being experimented on in a lab. Um, there's also a difference between precision and accuracy. So if we ask people to fill in a very rigorous survey, ticking lots of boxes to say whether they are 10% more confident or 20% more confident, if they would score their agency at a score of 4 out of 10 or 6 out of 10, that creates very precise data, data that lends itself to being turned into pie charts and graphs. But it's not necessarily accurate if it doesn't reflect reality. If people are ticking a box because that was the only option they were given, and if they'd had a chance to speak to you, they'd have given a very different answer, then the qualitative would have been more accurate than the quantitative. If people are ticking a box which is true, but it's true for very particular reasons, and they have had no opportunity to share those reasons or to unpack that answer, then again, we have precision without accuracy. An informal, messy, creative, conversational evaluation, which on the surface seems to be creating lots of messy, hard to understand data, can often be more accurate and therefore more usable than the precise mathematical stuff, because it creates an environment where people can be honest, where they can tell you how they really feel. And as evaluators, we want to know how people really feel so that we can genuinely learn together and genuinely grow together. And my final point, number 10, would be that we can only start from where we are. So you may be listening to me thinking, we do all of that already, brilliant. Or you may be listening thinking, we are a million miles away from being able to do this. It feels overwhelming. And what I would say to reassure all of you is that this is a journey as much as it's a destination. The important thing isn't to say you should all be co-evaluating and it should be perfect and you need to do it tomorrow. The important thing is to say, how can we take principles like the 10 I've just talked about, and how can we make sure that our next evaluation is a bit better than our last evaluation? How can we tweak things so they become a little bit more creative? They give people a little bit more freedom. They give people more opportunities to talk than they had previously. If we are always looking for those simple, small steps we can take with the time and the money and the resource and the expertise that we have, then we will keep moving in the right direction. And over time, we will see that snowball effect of things getting better and better. But be patient with yourself, be realistic, set yourself achievable goals, and simply ask, how can I make the next one better than the last one? And you will keep going and you will keep improving. And on that note, I noticed Liddy's been sharing some really helpful things for us in the chat. There is an evaluation toolkit we've developed as the Co-Production Network for Wales. It's called Proving and Improving. It's called Proving because often we need to prove that our work is having an impact for our funders, for our sponsors, for our partners, and improving because true co-evaluation is about learning and growing together. And in the Proving and Improving toolkit, you're asked a series of questions. You're encouraged to explore them with your communities. They will help you find the perfect evaluation methodologies for your needs, and they will show you how to implement those methodologies in your circumstances and tell you how those methodologies align with the principles of good co-production at the same time. That was a really whistle-stop tour. Like I said, do follow up on those links. And with any time we have remaining, I would be more than happy to reflect on and answer any questions any of you may have. So thank you for your patience. I really enjoyed speaking to you all this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Mike. And yeah, well done for fitting all of that into such a short amount of time. So really appreciate you coming along and taking part in that session today. So yeah, a couple of minutes if anyone's got any questions they want to ask. I'll also launch the poll as well at the same time. So if you could take a minute or two just to fill that in, that'd be really great. I'll just launch it a minute.
And I will also share into the chat my own email address. I'm always happy if people have any questions about co-evaluation or co-production more broadly, that you know where to find me. As a network, we're always keen to support people interested in co-production. So you
Okay,
can
great.
find me there too.
Thank you, Mike. Brilliant. Yeah.